It's almost 4 in the morning, and I'm sitting here in my apartment, typing this on my phone because I can't sleep. My brain keeps replaying the disaster that became my life. If you're reading this, take it as a warning. Sometimes the person you trust the most is the one holding the knife behind your back. I'm Jake, 34, and up until a few months ago, I thought I had a pretty solid life. My wife, Natalie, 32, and I had the house, decent jobs. And from the outside looking in, we were the couple that had their shit together. You know the type, always hosting game nights, smiling in pictures, people saying, "You two are perfect together." We even had a Maine Coon cat named Diesel, a massive black and gray striped fluffball with the attitude of a king and the loyalty of a dog. Diesel followed me everywhere, hopped onto the sink while I brushed my teeth, and woke me up every morning by headbutting my face. Natalie always said Diesel was more my cat than hers, and she was right. For 3 years, we've been trying for a baby. 3 freaking years. At first, it was fun. The whole maybe tonight's the night excitement. But after months of negative tests, hope turned into frustration, and frustration turned into silence. Every month, we'd sit in the bathroom staring at another single pink line, neither of us knowing what to say. I remember one night, after another failed test, Natalie just slid to the floor and sobbed. I sat next to her, useless. We both knew something was wrong. Meanwhile, all our friends were having kids like it was nothing, posting perfect family pictures, planning birthday parties. And us, we were just stuck. After a full workup of tests, the doctors couldn't find anything wrong with either of us. Unexplained infertility. The most frustrating diagnosis imaginable. That's when Natalie brought up IVF. Her voice shook when she suggested it, and I didn't even hesitate. Said yes right away. Because that's what you do for the person you love. You take on the stress, the medical bills, the emotional roller coaster. You go through it together. IVF was expensive as hell, but we made it work. Natalie took charge of the process. She handled the appointments, the paperwork, the schedule. She told me it was mostly routine checkups and that the clinic would call me if they needed anything important. And like a fool, I trusted her completely. I did go to a few key appointments, including the embryo transfer. I was right there, holding her hand, thinking, this is it. This is the start of our family. I even took a picture of us in the clinic room to remember the moment. The first few months were everything I had hoped for. Natalie was finally pregnant. We started working on the nursery. I spent an entire weekend painting it myself. Diesel, being an absolute menace, kept jumping into the paint tray and tracking blue paw prints across the carpet. Things felt good. Until one random Monday night, when I was sorting through insurance paperwork and found something that made my stomach drop. A sperm donor ID. That wasn't mine. At first, I thought it was just a clerical error, some dumb mix-up. But I grabbed another document with my patient number and compared them. They didn't match. That was the moment everything inside me froze. I sat there for hours, staring at the papers, telling myself it had to be a mistake, that there was a reasonable explanation, that Natalie could never do something like this. But by morning, I couldn't ignore the cold, sick feeling in my gut. As soon as Natalie left for work, I drove straight to the IVF clinic. I remember gripping the steering wheel in the parking lot, trying to breathe, because deep down I already knew. When I walked inside, I was polite, calm. I asked the receptionist, her name tag said Megan, to confirm which embryo had been used for our procedure. She smiled, started typing, and then her face changed. A little frown, a confused tilt of the head. "That's strange," she muttered. "It looks like a donor specimen was used instead." My entire body went ice cold. "What do you mean?" My voice sounded calm, but my hands were clenched into fists. "It says here that your wife authorized the change." I felt like I was in a nightmare. "That should have required my consent," I said through gritted teeth. Megan checked the file again. "It says she signed for it." I turned and walked out of that clinic in a daze. I got into my car, stared at the steering wheel, and tried to breathe. Natalie, the woman I had built my life with, the woman I trusted, she had erased me from my own child's life, and I had no idea why. I called my boss on the drive home and told him I had a family emergency. He didn't even ask questions, just told me to take the time I needed. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my hands were shaking. I knew, deep down I knew, that my life was about to split into two halves. Before this moment, and after, I slammed the front door so hard Diesel bolted under the couch. And there was Natalie, sitting on the couch, crying. Her face was blotchy and red, her hands shaking as she wiped her eyes. You went to the IVF clinic. It wasn't a question. That's when I knew. This wasn't a mistake. She knew exactly what she had done. I just stood there, staring at her, so furious I couldn't even speak. Megan texted me, she whispered. She said you were asking questions. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. Is she the same friend who helped you switch the embryos? Natalie sucked in a breath. Her whole body flinched. That was all I needed to see. She knew. She knew exactly what she had done. And I was about to make sure she never got away with it. I stood in the doorway, the house that once felt like home now suffocating, walls closing in. Diesel, my massive Maine Coon, perched on the stairs, his yellow eyes flicking between me and Natalie like he could sense the storm brewing. And it was... Natalie sat on the couch, her hands clasped together in her lap, knuckles white from gripping a crumpled tissue. She looked up at me, her face blotchy from crying, eyes pleading, but I wasn't buying the act. Not this time. You went to the clinic, she whispered. It wasn't a question. I let the words hang in the air for a moment, heavy, suffocating. Then I stepped forward, slow and deliberate. Yeah, I went to the clinic. She inhaled sharply, looking away like a guilty kid caught stealing from the cookie jar. And, she muttered, and I repeated, my voice cold. I found out that my own wife swapped out our embryo for a donor, without telling me, without asking me, without even considering that maybe, just maybe, I deserved to know whose DNA was being used to create the child I thought was mine. She squeezed her eyes shut. Jake, who is he? I cut her off, voice sharper now. Her head snapped up. It doesn't matter. I barked out a bitter laugh. Wrong answer. It matters more than anything. She shook her head, sniffing hard. I wanted the best for our baby, Jake. That's all this was. A chance at better genetics, stronger traits, a healthier future. Bullshit. I slammed my keys on the counter, so hard Diesel flinched. Natalie did too. You don't get to make that decision on your own. That's not wanting the best. That's playing God. Her face twisted, frustration flickering beneath the tears. You don't understand, Jake. You think this is just about you. But it's about our child's future. I made a choice that wasn't yours to make. My voice rose, echoing off the walls. You erased me from my own family, Natalie. That's not love. That's betrayal. She shook her head, her whole body trembling. I didn't do it to hurt you. I swear. Then tell me who he is. She froze. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know. My stomach churned as I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling to the clinic's number. I held it out to her. Call them. Right now. Tell them to confirm the donor's name. Her lips parted, panic flashing in her eyes. Jake, please. Call them. She didn't move. She didn't have to. I already knew. Slowly, I lowered my phone and took a step back. It's him, isn't it? She stayed silent, blinking rapidly. I let out a hollow laugh. Oh my God! It's David. The air left the room. Natalie's entire body sagged, her face crumbling. And there it was, David Barnes, her ex-boyfriend, the guy she had dated for years before me, the one who always seemed to conveniently pop up in conversations, the one she used to stalk on social media when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the one she wanted to have a baby with. Not me. I can explain, she choked out. Explain. My voice was raw. What's left to explain? You lied to me. You planned this. And you expect me to just understand. I didn't think you'd ever find out, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. That was the worst part. Not just the deception, not just the manipulation, but the fact that she never intended to tell me the truth. She was going to let me raise his kid, thinking it was mine. How long? I asked, my throat tight. What? How long have you been in contact with him? She hesitated. That hesitation was another slap in the face. Jesus Christ. I ran a hand over my face, exhaling hard. You never stopped talking, did you? You planned this from the start. Natalie started sobbing again, big, messy tears that once would have broken me. Now they just made me sick. I thought, she hiccuped, I thought you'd be okay with it, Jake. I thought once the baby was here, it wouldn't matter whose DNA it was. You'd love them either way. I stared at her, disgust curling in my gut. You thought I'd just never find out? I whispered. She nodded, I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. You are unbelievable. I turned toward the door. Jake, wait. I ignored her. I grabbed Diesel's carrier from the closet, scooped him up despite his annoyed meow, and threw some of his food into a bag. You're leaving? Natalie sobbed. No, Natalie, I said flatly, I'm getting the hell away from you. You're taking the cat? I shot her a look. At least he's actually mine. Then I walked out the door and didn't look back. I drove aimlessly for over an hour. Diesel curled up in the passenger seat, his tail flicking occasionally. My mind was a whirlwind of rage, heartbreak, and disbelief. How had I not seen it? Had I really been that blind? Eventually, I pulled up in front of my best friend Tyler's place. I didn't even text him first. Just knocked on the door, Diesel's carrier in one hand. The door swung open, and Tyler's brows shot up. Dude. He stepped aside immediately. What the hell happened? I stepped inside, dropped Diesel's bag on the floor, and exhaled. Natalie switched our embryo. I said, my voice raw. Used her ex's sperm instead of mine. Tyler blinked. Wait. What? I nodded, dropping onto his couch. Tyler ran a hand over his face. That is some next-level psychotic shit. Tell me about it. He disappeared into the kitchen, came back with 2 beers, and handed me one. So what now? He asked. I took a long swig before answering. I get a lawyer. The next morning, I made the call. Vanessa Brooks was a high-powered divorce attorney with a reputation for burying people like Natalie. You made the right choice calling me, she said after I explained everything. Your wife committed fraud, Jake. We're going to make sure she pays for it. For the first time in hours, I felt something close to relief. Natalie thought she had outsmarted me, thought she had locked me into her little scheme forever. She had no idea what was coming. I woke up on Tyler's couch to the feeling of Diesel's massive paws pressing into my chest. The cat had no idea my world had imploded. He just wanted breakfast. I scratched behind his ears, listening to the faint hum of Tyler moving around in the kitchen. A few seconds later, my best friend appeared in the doorway, holding a steaming mug of coffee. You look like shit. Feel like it too, I muttered, sitting up. My whole body ached from tension, like I had been clenching every muscle in my sleep. Maybe I had. Tyler leaned against the counter, watching me carefully. So what's the plan? You talked to a lawyer yet? I exhaled, rubbing my face. Yeah, meeting one today. Vanessa Brooks, supposed to be a shark. He nodded approvingly. Good. 'Cause Natalie? She doesn't deserve mercy. I didn't answer. Part of me still couldn't believe any of this was happening. A week ago, I was picking out paint for a nursery. Now, I was sitting in my best friend's apartment, plotting my divorce like it was a military operation. No, she didn't deserve mercy. By the time I arrived at Vanessa's office downtown, I had replayed every single conversation with Natalie 100 times in my head. The betrayal, the excuses, the moment she admitted it was David's sperm, not mine. I was exhausted, but there was no time to be tired now. I needed to win. Vanessa was a no-nonsense woman, the kind who could make a grown man stammer with a single look. She gestured to the chair across from her desk without much of a greeting. Tell me everything. So I did. I laid it all out. The IVF process, the moment I found out, the confrontation, and every sickening detail in between. She didn't react, just took notes in sharp, efficient strokes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, tapping her pen against the desk. You've got a gold mine of a case. That good. That bad for her, she corrected, smirking. Fraud. Deception. Signing off on medical documents without your consent. She thought she was smart, but she left a paper trail. You have everything you need to bury her. I clenched my jaw. So what happens now? First, we file for divorce. But before that, we need to make sure you're legally not the father. Because as long as you're married when the baby is born, the law assumes it's yours. We challenge paternity before she tries to stick you with child support. The thought made my stomach turn. She can do that, even if I'm not the biological father. Vanessa nodded. Oh, she'll try. Women like her always do. But we're going to shut it down. First, I'll file a motion to obtain the clinic's official records. Then, we demand a DNA test as soon as the baby is born. After that, we make sure she gets nothing. No assets, no alimony, no financial support. I let out a slow breath, my fingers tightening into fists. How long will this take? Depends. Could be months. But with your evidence, it won't be long before she realizes she's screwed. She'll probably try to negotiate. No negotiations, I said flatly. Vanessa smiled, clearly satisfied with my answer. Good. I'll have the papers ready by tomorrow. 2 days passed. I ignored Natalie's texts. At first, they were apologetic. Jake, I know you're mad, but please don't throw away our marriage over mistake. Then they became desperate. We can still be a family. Please don't do this. Then they turned nasty. You're being selfish. This baby still needs a father. You're really going to abandon us? I forwarded every single message to Vanessa. The next day, she texted me one simple update. It's done. She's been served. That night, an unknown number called me. I didn't need to check to know who it was. What the hell is this? Natalie's voice was sharp, bordering on hysteria. It's a divorce. I answered, my tone devoid of emotion. You're actually going through with this? Over a baby? I clenched my jaw. Over a lie. Over the fact that you tried to manipulate me into raising your ex's child. Over the fact that you thought you could get away with it. She let out a bitter, humorless laugh. I was right, though, wasn't I? If you never found that paperwork, you would have raised this baby like your own, and you would have loved them. I gripped my phone so hard I thought it might crack. But I did find out Natalie, and now you don't get to decide what I do anymore. She sniffled. I don't have anywhere to go, Jake. The house is mine. You can't just leave me with nothing. Watch me. I hung up, and this time I blocked her number for good. The legal war moved quickly. Vanessa was relentless. She got the clinic's official records, proving that Natalie had signed off on the embryo switch without my consent. Then, she got a judge to issue an order preventing Natalie from claiming any financial support from me. The DNA test came back as expected. 0 biological relation to the baby. The moment that result hit the court, it was game over. The divorce was finalized. Natalie got nothing. The house? Mine. The savings? Mine. The car? Mine. Every last thing she thought she was entitled to? Gone. She called me one last time after the ruling. Jake, please, I'm pregnant and I have nothing. That's not my problem. I made a mistake. No, I cut her off. You made a choice. Now live with it. 6 months passed. I moved into a new place. A house with a big backyard, where Diesel could stretch out in the sun and watch the birds from the window. The divorce was old news, and Natalie was just a bad memory. I heard through mutual friends that David, the man she sacrificed everything for, had completely ghosted her. No child support, no contact. She had bet everything on him, and he left her with nothing. One evening, I sat on my porch, watching the sky fade into deep blues and oranges. Diesel lay beside me, his tail flicking lazily, completely at peace. For the first time in years, I felt the same. Natalie thought she had trapped me, thought I'd be too weak to walk away. But in the end, she was the one left alone, and I was finally free. I had barely started settling into my new life when Natalie made one last desperate attempt to pull me back into her mess. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was in the middle of putting together a new bookshelf for my office. Diesel, sprawled across the instruction manual like a furry paperweight, watched me struggle with the screws like this was some kind of entertainment. I had my phone on silent, ignoring the world, until I heard pounding at my front door. Not knocking, pounding. I opened the door to find Natalie standing there, holding a baby carrier, her face streaked with tears. Behind her were her parents and her older brother, Mike, all looking at me like I was some criminal. You need to take responsibility for your son. Her mother snapped before I could even speak. For a second, I just stared at them, utterly baffled. Then I burst out laughing. My son, I repeated, are you people out of your minds? Natalie's father stepped forward, his face red with barely contained rage. The baby needs a father, Jake. You were married when he was conceived. That means nothing. I cut him off. We went to court. I proved that kid isn't mine. There's a legal record of it. You can check the damn ruling. Natalie sniffled, rocking the fussing baby in her arms. But Jake, look at him, she pleaded. He could be yours. We don't really know for sure. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Oh, we do know. That paternity test? Pretty damn conclusive. Those tests can be wrong, her mother argued. Look at his eyes. They look just like yours. The audacity of this woman was unreal. I folded my arms. So now, after months of lying to me, after switching my embryo for her ex-boyfriends, after getting legally destroyed in court, You're standing here trying to gaslight me into thinking this kid might still be mine? Do you people hear yourselves? Mike, who had been quiet up until now, suddenly stepped forward, getting in my face. You're just going to abandon them? Leave them with nothing? She made this mess. Not me. You're a real piece of shit, you know that? He snarled. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. And you're on my property, threatening me. So, unless you want to call the cops, I suggest you back the hell up. Natalie let out another dramatic sob. Jake, please. I can't do this alone. David left. He won't even answer my calls. My parents are helping, but we're struggling. Not my problem. Have a heart, Jake, her father exploded. Be a man. Step up and do the right thing. I let out a slow breath, looking at each one of them. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the camera app, and hit record. Say that again, I said calmly. Say that last part for camera. You want to try and pressure me into raising another man's child after your daughter lied, cheated, and tried to trap me for life? Go ahead. Explain why I should care. Natalie's mother grabbed her husband's arm. Don't say another word. Mike looked ready to explode, but his dad pulled him back. This isn't over, he warned. Oh, it really is, I said, giving him a mock salute. Now get off my property before I call the police for trespassing. Natalie sobbed harder, but they had no choice. One by one, they turned and left, Natalie clutching the baby like she thought I might change my mind at the last second. I didn't. I watched them pile into their car, and as soon as they were gone, I locked the door, exhaling slowly. Diesel, who had been watching from the hallway, let out a little chirp and rubbed against my leg. Yeah, buddy, I muttered. I can't believe it either. The next morning, I sent Vanessa the recording. She responded immediately. Smart move. We'll file a restraining order today. Natalie had played every card she had left, and now she was officially out of the game. I thought it was over. That after Natalie's last pathetic attempt to guilt-trip me into taking responsibility for her mess, I'd never have to hear from her again. But people like Natalie, they don't go down easy. A month passed, and for the first time in a long time, I started feeling like myself again. The house was mine, my accounts were secure, and Diesel had officially claimed every square inch of the place as his personal kingdom. I was done with the drama, done with her, and then she showed up at my job. I had just stepped out of a meeting when I spotted her standing in the lobby, clutching a folder and looking like she rehearsed some tragic speech in her head 100 times. My stomach twisted in disgust. Security hadn't thrown her out yet, probably because she was putting on her usual poor, abandoned wife act. I walked right up to her, keeping my voice calm. Leave. Jake, please, she whispered, eyes already welling up. Just 5 minutes. I let out a slow breath, barely containing my rage. You showed up at my job, Natalie. That's stalking. She shook her head frantically. No, I have something you need to see. I didn't give a damn what was in that folder, but I also wasn't about to cause a scene in my own workplace. I grabbed it from her hands and flipped it open. Inside were pages of financial statements, medical bills, eviction notices. You think I care? I asked coldly, flipping through them like they were meaningless junk mail. She swallowed hard. I'm being evicted, Jake. My parents, my own parents, won't help anymore. I can't afford the hospital bills. I can't find a job because I took so much time off of pregnancy, and David is long gone. I finished for her. Yeah, I know. Her eyes filled with fresh tears. I don't have anyone, Jake. I have no one left. For a second, just a second, I almost felt something. Not sympathy, just a distant, lingering memory of the woman I thought I had married. But that woman never really existed. I closed the folder and handed it back. That's not my problem. Jake, I know I hurt you, she pleaded. I know I made a terrible mistake. But can't we just... I cut her off. You didn't just hurt me, Natalie. You betrayed me. You tried to erase me from my own family. And now, you're paying for it. That's how life works. She let out a shaky breath, looking down. I don't know what to do. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because I was happy, but because I was finally free. You figure out, I said simply. Then I turned around and walked away. She didn't follow. She didn't call after me. She didn't show up at my house again. And just like that, Natalie was gone. A week later, Vanessa sent me a final update. Natalie had officially lost everything. No job, no home, no backup plan. She was completely alone. I didn't feel bad. I felt vindicated. That weekend, I sat on my porch. Diesel curled up beside me, watching the sun dip below the horizon. For the first time in years, my world was quiet. No lies, no betrayal, no guilt. Just me, my life, my freedom. Natalie thought she could trap me, thought I'd be weak, thought I'd forgive. But now, she was nothing more than a bad memory. And me, I was finally completely free,